What's shaking, everybody? Welcome to the Loewy Law Firm Postgame Show here on Orangebloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Jason Sucamel. The Texas Longhorns have just finished off the Kansas Jayhawks to the tune of 40-14. Longhorns cover. Longhorns look impressive in the second half. It was a little bit of a sloppy game over the course of the first 30 minutes. There were injuries that we will surely talk about, with Jatavion Sanders and Ryan Watts both leaving the game. Kansas without Jalen Daniels. And Jason, I had just gotten finished saying, hey, for the first time in like a month, we don't have like a pregame injury report to have to worry about going into the game. And then like 5 seconds later, it was like, hey, Jalen Daniels is missing from the pregame workouts, and maybe he isn't going to play. It changed the dynamic of the entire game. But if you're Texas, you don't care. You put this game behind you. It is now officially OU week. Jason, your initial thoughts?
Interesting game. Like you said, first half and even into the third quarter. I mean, Texas just kind of kept letting Kansas hang around and leaving points on the field with missed field goals and not getting in the end zone and things. And then, Texas did what good teams do. They just blew it open in the third and fourth quarter, late in the third and fourth quarter. Scrappy effort by Kansas. Kudos to them. But, at the end, you look up and 40-14. That looks pretty impressive against a ranked opponent. So, and Jason Bean, I get it. Yeah, Daniel's not playing. That certainly affects the complexion of this game. But, Jason Bean's a pretty good quarterback in his own right, or has been. So kudos to the Texas defense. 0 for 10 Kansas combined on third and fourth downs. Other than kind of the fluky touchdown play where they fumble it and scoop it in, and then the kind of a blown coverage. I mean, really only two missteps for Texas. But it's weird. Like the first half, I'm on Orangebloods, of course, and I'm writing, and everybody's complaining and up in arms about its sloppy play and fire this guy and that guy. And then you look up at the end of the game, it's like, okay, 40-14, pretty good win. So good win overall for Texas. You got some injury things. We'll have to hear what Sark has to say about JT Sanders, Ryan Watts. Texas needs those guys to be healthy for next week, hopefully. But good overall win. Like you said, I said it in my last thought was, hey, now on to OU. Should be a fun week. So 5-0 on to OU.
It reminded me of an old-fashioned Mac Brown win. Rich people problems.
Yeah.
You win by 26 points, which in layman's terms, you win by 4 touchdowns, essentially.
The spread was what? Down to like 16. So, I mean, they covered the spread by 2 scores. I mean,
no, you cover the spread. And you're fairly dominant in the second half. I mean, other than the one big pass play that they connected on, it was kind of exactly what you'd want if you were Texas in the final 30 minutes of the game. They continue this run of really good second half performances in every game that they've played so far this season. And yet there is a tendency to want to nitpick the game a little bit, right? There's a little bit of they left points on the field in the first half, and they did. They missed 2 field goals. I'm writing my story right now. In the first half, they got inside the 10-yard line twice, inside the 30-yard line another 2 times in the first half. They came away with 6 points. So the game management towards the end of the first half wasn't great either. There were like lots of little things.
I mean, Texas was out gaining them by I forget how many hundreds of yards, but you're like, oh, it's a 1-score game in the third.
It was a dominant statistical performance, and yet it was 13-7, and then it's 20-14, and Kansas is hanging around, and you could kind of sense the restlessness of it all. And then Texas, by the way, Baylor has taken a 36-35 lead over Central Florida. That just happened. They were down 35-10, I think, at the start of the fourth quarter. So kudos to the Bears for responding back. I'm watching that game right now. There's not a lot going on in the world of college football in the aftermath of this. We'll have some games in the evening that will be interesting to keep an eye on, the least of which won't be Oklahoma. Jason, let's talk a little bit about the Sanders injury. I mean, it feels like of all the things that happened today, and by the way, shout out to Jonathan Brooks. Don't mean to leave him out on a day when he runs for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. Shout out to Adonai Mitchell, who finished with the best game of his career. He never had a game at Georgia quite like this one, and hadn't had a game like this at Texas either, finishing with 10 catches for 141 yards and a touch. He was sensational. Yet the thing that we'll be talking about once this game's in the rearview mirror, and it kind of already is, because Oklahoma's next week.
Mm-hmm.
You assess who's available, who's not, and who wasn't available at the end of this game. With all due respect to Ryan Watts, and we'll certainly talk a little bit about that. But man, from the moment you saw the Sanders injury and him get rolled up, it looked bad. The play looked bad. It didn't look like he was in excruciating pain on the sideline, but man, he never came close to getting back in that game. They had him on the sideline a little bit, then he goes to the tunnel. I'm sure it will be one of the first questions that Steve Sarkisian is asked about when he gets into the postgame.
Yeah. When it first happened, I was worried maybe it was his knee because he kind of got bent backwards. And I'm watching the TV broadcast and I swear I heard him scream out whenever he got kind of rolled up on. I'm like, oh, that looks really, really bad. I think the good sign there, Catch, is that he was on the sidelines in the second half and he was walking. I mean, had a little bit of a hobble, it looked like, but he was at least on the sidelines. So, they said I think they said an ankle injury is what they ended up saying. So maybe it's just a minor ankle sprain, not as bad as it originally looked and sounded when you kind of heard that scream from, I'm assuming it was JT Sanders. I swear I heard a scream from somebody on that play. I even went back and rewound the play. So, but the fact that he was on the sidelines, kind of hobbling around, I didn't see if he had a boot on or what, but to me, that's a good sign. Now, is he going to be ready for Oklahoma? Ankle sprains can be tricky. Those things can linger. You can re-aggravate them. Depends on, the dreaded high ankle sprain versus a routine ankle sprain. We'll see. I'm sure we'll get a bit of an update from Sark, but that might be a deal where we really don't know his status until on Monday or something when they have a bit better chance to evaluate him for a couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is he didn't go off on a cart.
Right.
I didn't see him in a boot, which they put guys in boots for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
I would almost bet that he'll end up in a boot at some point this weekend. Like maybe they'll go back into the locker room at some point and we'll see that because they always do that. And they put boots on guys for almost any reason at all. Yeah. If there's like an ankle issue or a foot issue, that he wasn't on crutches. There's, I think there's reason for optimism, but I thought it took Texas a while to adjust. I think they weren't the same offense when he goes out injured, and they're not the same offense in general. Like it will change what Texas potentially does this week. If he were unable to play, you play less 12 personnel, which is a big part of the Texas offense. I think you play less 11 personnel. They keep trying to force the Gunnar Helm passing attack thing. And I'm not so sure that you just wouldn't want to have Jonte Cook on the field instead.
Yep.
So it does change the identity of the Texas offense if he's not able to play. But we're a little bit of ways from that. Again, we'll see what Sarkisian says in the postgame show. But for a Texas team that's been sensationally clean in the way of injuries, I mean, they just haven't had to deal with a lot of major ones so far in this young season. That's a big one. If it keeps him from playing against Oklahoma, if he's able to play, then this is a little minor incident in a game that you win by 26 points. But now that it's over, it's hard not to think about the injuries.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a dynamic part of the offense. And like you said, he's obviously as a receiver, but even as a blocker, and he frees things up for other guys. Gunnar Helm, he played well last week, and they tried to get him involved this week. But I'm with you, man. Like I said, I don't know at whose expense, but get Jonte Cook on the field more. Anytime that dude touches the ball, it feels like he has a chance to pop a huge play. I don't know that he would be at the expense of JT Sanders necessarily, but if you can find ways to get Jonte on the field, get him more involved, if that means maybe less action for Gunnar Helm, so be it. But we'll see. That would be a big blow for Texas. I mean, obviously, JT Sanders, one of the top players in the country at his position. One of the top players on this Texas offense, one of the most reliable players on this Texas offense. But this is a good enough team that even without JT Sanders, they've got enough weapons, I feel like, where they can absorb that kind of loss if he's not able to go next week. Not ideal. Obviously, it's not ideal to play without him, but if he's unable to go, I mean, this is still a team that can absorb his absence because they have so many other weapons they can get involved.
We'll have Anwar Richardson join us as normal. It could be it might take a while. One of the things that Anwar likes to say is that when they have recruits in town, that they oftentimes takes longer for him to get through the post-game portion of talking to the media, because he'll sometimes, I know it's crazy to think about this, Longhorn fans, he'll sometimes show up a little later for post-game media responsibilities. Shocker if you ever watch the Monday press conferences. So we'll see. I'll keep my eye on Twitter and make sure that if there is an update I feel like what he's going to say about Jatavion Sanders. He's going to say that he's day-to-day, that they don't think it's that bad. And I think he's probably right, but I think there will be some vagueness in the amount of details that we get on that one. But it's such a big deal. I mean, with all due respect in retrospect, maybe the CJ Baxter injury, boy, there's so much to talk about in this game. We haven't really talked about Jonathan Brooks because we're talking about the Jatavion Sanders injury. I'll just say this. We'll keep everybody updated on the injuries. Let's turn our attention to a couple of game balls, Jason, that I think you'd absolutely have to hand out. Both Adonai Mitchell, who catches a career best 10 balls for 141 yards, and Jonathan Brooks. If anybody asked Sark all week if Jonathan Brooks is going to be the starting running back for the rest of the season, whatever you do, Sark, don't say yes. Just say you're the starting running back for right now. We'll see over the course of the season. 20 carries, 217 yards, a 10.9 yards per carry average. To put that into some perspective, CJ Baxter finishes the game with 16 carries, and he averaged 4.3 yards per carry. Those two players, Jason, so far this season have not been the same. Texas had some big performers on the offensive side of the ball with Sanders out. Brooks just continues to do what he does every week and just produces every time you give him the ball. Seems like he comes up big. And poor Alex, see Alex sent on Slack, he keeps playing the less on Brooks on Prize Picks. Alex, you might want to pound these mores on Jay Brooks, man. But Adonai Mitchell was fantastic. Baxter, I thought his 4.3 average isn't going to jump off the page. I thought Baxter's best play was on that pass he caught where he kind of one-hands it and then slips out of a tackle and shows his explosiveness. Jonte only got one catch, but we saw what he's capable of. If I'm giving game balls, obviously Brooks and Adonai Mitchell are obvious choices. I'm giving one to Quinn Ewers too, man. 325. I know he threw an interception, first one of the year. 325 yards, one touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns, including it was 30-yarder, I believe, the first one, right? Interestingly, I don't know who I'm giving game balls to on defense. I'd give one to Jalen Ford. He was really good. 5
tackles solo, 7 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 quarterback carry. Good game, but not there was no just dominant performance by the defense. I didn't feel like individually. The defense as a whole played really well. I thought the first half, I was like, that defensive line was kind of just absent. And then the second half, the defensive line kind of just took over. So, I don't know. I guess if I'm giving a defensive game ball, it probably would be Jalen Ford. He'd be the obvious one. But yeah, definitely Adonai Mitchell, Jonathan Brooks. I'm giving one to Quinn Ewers too. And you know what? We'll see what Alex, I'd like to see what he has to say when he breaks it down. But I thought the offensive line, especially a couple of those runs, like Jonathan Brooks, that one, man, that just parted like the Red Sea. So, I thought the offensive line really had some moments where it played really well too.
I think the Texas offensive line was really, really good. Shout out to Jake Majors. Every time it felt like they showed a replay of one of those big Texas runs, it felt like Jake Majors was making a really good block. But quite frankly, I thought DJ Campbell did as well. Christian Jones, very good. By the way, Baylor going to get out of Dodge, get out of Orlando with a 36-35 win. Bears' largest comeback in program history, down by 28, coming back to win that game. Hey, man.
26 points scored in the fourth quarter for Baylor. That's incredible.
No, they were getting routed, and they come back. shows a lot of mental toughness to come back and win that game. I think everybody on the Texas offensive line, I think they'll have high scores. Texas was just going up and down the field, and there were a few sacks. I think one of the more interesting parts of this game, Jason, for me, was that the entire Texas defensive line as a collective unit, not a single tackle for loss in the entire game. Texas finishes with only 3 tackles for loss in the game. Ford had 1, Jahdae Barron had 1, Michael Taft had 1, and that Taft's 1 was created by Baron Sorrell. So I wouldn't say that the Texas defensive line didn't play well like they did, because the Kansas running game down the stretch, went from averaging almost 8 yards a carry by the end of the game. The Kansas rush attack only averaged 5 yards a carry. So it had been good, but Kansas running the ball in the first quarter, I think they had over 90 yards rushing in the first quarter. They finished with 124 yards after really having their way in the first quarter in the run game. Kind of shocking. The Texas defense really stepped up against the run to limit them to 124 yards in the game. Couldn't have been more than 30, 35, 40 yards in the final 3 quarters combined.
Yeah, that's impressive. I didn't really even notice that, but only 124 yards, because that first quarter alone, I mean, they were killing Texas with those option runs and breaking off some big gains. And like Neal's their leading rusher with 45, Highshaw 44, Bean at 42. So only 124 yards. They still average 5 yards a carry, which is pretty good. But early on, it looked like, I don't know if Texas was just not prepared for it, or just guys were taking bad angles or what. But that option game was killing Texas early on. But they did a good job of adjusting. Jason Bean, 9 of 21. He came into this game with like 180-something passer rating. I get it; it's a small sample size, but this is a quarterback that actually has played pretty well. I mean, Texas held him 9 of 21 for 136, 113 rating. So just a phenomenal effort by the defense. But you're right, man. It's just a weird game in that there weren't a lot of splash plays by the defense at all. 3 tackles for loss. The defensive line, I thought, played pretty sluggishly in the first half, but in the second half they kind of took over and started to create some havoc there. But really stepped up, when they needed to. Again, 0 for 10 combined 3rd and 4th downs for Kansas. I mean, they held Kansas to 260 yards. Texas put up 661 yards. I mean, 40-14 is a pretty good ass kicking, but I think almost statistically it was probably even worse than that. I mean, Kansas just never looked comfortable other than those early runs. Kansas just never looked comfortable offensively. So good job. I mean, we'll focus on the offense, and Jonathan Brooks will get a game ball and get patted on the back as he should. But just a good, consistent effort, I thought, by the defense really across the board from top to bottom, other than probably the one it wasn't a busted coverage, it was just bad coverage where the receiver, I think it was Keaton Crawford, maybe got beat there.
Yeah, he just ran right by him.
Yeah, so, other than that one play, and then the other touchdown where Bean fumbles it and homeboy scoops it up and runs it in. But, all in all, man, take away a couple plays, and it was, I won't say a near flawless game, but it was a really good effort by the Texas defense.
Yeah. I mean, this game ends up, I think, being a better performance than there will be some Texas fans. And look, rightfully so. Texas should have blown this Kansas team out early on, and the only thing that kept them from doing so was Texas. Texas didn't, especially on the offensive side of the ball, didn't execute great in the first half. But for the 5th straight game, we see a really good second half performance. I think, once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a trend. This is 5 consecutive games now where Texas in the second half has put together their best football. So, they're going in at halftime and they're coming back out at halftime. And I thought Sark was better. I thought Sark had a little bit of a sketchy second quarter. I thought his clock management on that final offensive drive, they leave with 3 timeouts, and that whole drive would have looked different had they managed the clock a little bit better. They use a timeout. They could have come over and talked to Ewers about the game situation and what was needed and what wasn't needed. They were already in field goal range. Like, there was a whole lot that they could have gone to there. I thought I think when Sanders goes out, I think they were, and look, some of this is easy to understand. You lose a Jatavion Sanders from the lineup, and maybe it takes a little bit of time to adjust. But I said this earlier, the Longhorns in the first half twice got the ball inside the 10-yard line. They weren't able to come away with points or touchdowns, rather. They were able to get 2 field goals. 2 or 3 other times, they were able to get the ball inside the Kansas 30 and weren't able to come away with points. They miss a couple of long field goals. If you're Bert Auburn next week, get those out of your system. Texas is going to need you to be better than you were today against a better Kansas team. I think there'd be some gnashing of teeth over what Auburn didn't do with field goals. Because, if he even makes one of those, this game extends from 1 score to 2 score, and it really changes the complexion of the game going into the third quarter. Because then if you score coming out of the third quarter, which Texas did, now you're up by 16, and just the whole game feels over. And it really did. The game wasn't really over until there was about 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. Texas is up 20-14. Kansas is faced with a 4th and 1 at their own 39-yard line. At the time, I was like, oh, I guess go for it. I understand why you would, but my whole thought process on Kansas in this game was like Wyoming. You want to get the ball into the fourth quarter in a 1-score game. If you go for it on 4th and 1 there and you convert, you're still not even anywhere close to being in a position to get a field goal or a touchdown. I thought the risk versus reward in that situation, there was a lot more risk than reward. Kansas doesn't convert. It was a great job by the Texas defense to get penetration on that 4th down to create ultimately what was a fumble. They get the stop. Texas goes in and scores a touchdown on I think it was the 50. That was when Jonathan Brooks had the 55. No. That would have been the next touchdown. Texas goes in though and scores very quickly to go up by 13, and the ball game was over at that point. Then the exclamation mark comes on the 55-yard touchdown run by Jonathan Brooks. I thought, as much as I like Lance Leopold, I thought in the third quarter he made a couple of questionable decisions. And to Texas's credit, Jason, they really took advantage of them. They made Kansas play when Kansas dared to dream big, and Texas took those dreams right away from them and turned them into nightmares.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with him going for it. I mean, you heard him say, like, hey, we're going to have to take some chances in this game. That did set Texas up with a 32-yard field, and they ended up scoring that touchdown to make it 26-14. I didn't really have a problem with the decision. I mean, if they had any chance to win, he's going to have to take some risks like that. But that did pretty much blow the game open once Texas.
Well, that's the risk. It really becomes the ball game there. If you don't convert, the game's over, and it was.
And Texas did a great job. I want to say it was like 3rd and 1, maybe. I'd have to look. And they did a great job on 3rd down to force the 4th down play, and then Kansas kind of botches that 4th down play, helps Texas out a little bit. But I thought the defensive line really showed up in that sequence. That's where they first kind of popped off the page for me. And I was like, okay, that defensive line's here to play now. But that was a risky deal on your own 30. Well, Texas took over on the 32, so they might have been on like the 35, 36 when they snapped it. But that pretty much put the ball game away. That it was 20-14 at that time. So you're still within striking distance. Obviously, Texas takes over. Even if they only got a field goal out of it, that still pushed it to a 2-score lead. So. Risky play for sure, and it backfired on him, but I understand, like you said, I understand why he did it. I'm not going to beat Leipold up too much for that. You mentioned Bert Auburn, man. I mean, yeah, Texas, I don't know what the answer is there. I don't know if you just let him try to work through this slump, or do you try Will Stone or something? But, I mean, Texas is going to need more from Bert Auburn in games moving forward, possibly even next week. I mean, Texas needs or Bert Auburn needs to kind of work out of this funk, because if a game comes down to a 40-plus yard field goal, do you have confidence in Bert Auburn to hit a 40-plus yard field goal with the game on the line? I don't know, after what we saw today, and he's missed a few others this year already. So he's kind of in a little bit of a funk, but I don't know if you work through it. Just you got to ride with him if you're do or die with him, or if maybe they try to give Will Stone a shot. I don't know what the answer is. I don't
think you can change your kicker.
I don't think so, because Stone, if it was going to be Stone, he would have had a chance at some point already. I don't think you change your kicker. I think you're right. I think you ride with Bert Auburn and just hope he kind of gets those misses out of his system, but doesn't inspire a ton of confidence moving forward if Texas needs a big kick.
John Lynch in the Super Chat, seems like a heck of a game for a 5-star receiver to be in town for seeing the love that X and AD got all day. Moore was in town this weekend, right?
Yeah, there was a big Duncanville contingency. But yeah, DeCorey Moore was in town for this game. Colin Simmons was tweeting. I haven't checked Twitter to see if DeCorian tweeted anything, but yeah, DeCorian Moore, the LSU commitment for this second consecutive home game, was at this game. So yeah, big moment for Texas in front of those recruits, and obviously we'll be touching base with a lot of those guys. I don't know if it'll be tonight, but probably on Sunday. We'll be working the phone, see if we can get as many updates as we can on a lot of these recruits that are in town.
We'll knock out a few more Super Chats. I'm now finished with my post-game article. So now you have my complete and undivided attention. That includes you guys in the Super Chats. Please, by all means, keep sending them into the Specs chat, and we will make sure that we get to them. Does Sark forget he has timeouts in the first half? LOL, good win overall. And OU still sucks. Yes, Jake. I think he hates timeouts. I think he hates timeouts, like not throwing the ball deep. By the way, I'm watching this Oklahoma game.
What channel is that OU game on? Sorry.
FS1.
FS1, okay.
They go up, they score in the first minute. It looks like Billy Bowman might have had a play. It's 6-0 officially. I'm not quite sure what happened. I just looked up and the score is 6-0, and Billy Bowman's getting a bunch of pats on the head.
Pick six. Yeah, he had a pick six.
Yep. So we'll continue to knock out a few of these Super Chats.
Yeah, the timeouts thing was, and I'm with you, man. I thought the clock management, all gas, no breaks, all gas, no breaks. Well, that was very tentative at the end of the first half. Again, I understand Sark's thinking because he's like, hey, if we don't get a first down, Kansas is going to take over the ball in pretty good field position with a lot of time. But they end up getting the first down and, didn't use any timeouts. But I'm like, hey, man, if you're the better team and you're all gas, no breaks, just assume you're going to get that first down and go out there and try to score and execute and get some points at the end of the first half. I wasn't crazy about the lack of aggression there at the end of the first half by Sark, but I also understand why he did what he did and why he was conservative. But personally, I would have liked to have seen him be a little more aggressive.
James says it's obvious now to the naysayers that Texas has the coaching, talent, and drive to be a playoff team. Georgia's games have been lacking, and Michigan hasn't played anyone. Texas should be number 2, in my opinion. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I'd almost maybe – I'm assuming – is he saying Georgia would be number 1? I'm not sure. Michigan and Texas aren't the 2 best teams in the country, if I'm being honest.
I would have Washington ranked number 1 for me.
Texas honestly, yeah, I wouldn't argue that either. Yeah.
And nothing changed today from my perspective with regards to how I would have the rankings. We'll see what Washington does a little bit later on tonight. But that I have no issue right now with Texas being number 2, James. Thanks for the Super Chat. James S. jumps in. Lots of Jameses out there. Sanders was moving around on the sideline well and in good spirits in the second half, encouraging. Totally agree, James. Like the appearance, there were a lot of little things that would make you think that maybe it's not super serious, but ankle injuries – the thing I think you might almost be more concerned about. I think if he can move and he can go, you play him. But it might when you have an ankle injury like that, you're susceptible to re-injuring the ankle. It might not take much to trigger that. My guess, if you were to ask me, is that Sanders will play next week. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on the postgame show. I think there's a good chance based on what exactly you were saying, James. All of the signs point to it wasn't anything too major. He'll want to be on the field. You just cross your fingers that nothing happens during the game that would trigger the injury that in the middle of the game would cause you to lose Jatavion Sanders. But if I had to bet money on it, I think he'll go. I would probably, though, stay away from Jatavion Sanders on any prize picks discussion for next week because
someone did say on Twitter – oh, he did have a boot on. I just saw. Okay.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah. After the game, there's a picture.
Well, and that doesn't scare me.
No, exactly. They do boots now for even the slightest ankle sprain.
I was about to say, even if he didn't have a boot on the field, they were going to put one on him when he leaves the stadium. Yeah. Michael says some of these screen passes give me seizures. Michael, you know what? Give Kansas credit on those plays. Texas didn't do a lot of screen game today. They tried to run one to Helm after Sanders was injured that didn't come off. They threw the ball into the flat a couple of times, one to Worthy early in the game that went for -4. They had another one where they threw it to Keelan Robinson on the other side of the field that went for -2. I thought Kansas just defends those plays pretty well. I mean, if you're Texas, you throw those balls, specifically the ones out into the flat, because you're going to get one-on-one matchups, and the Kansas guys made tackles. Sometimes the other team does just make plays, and I thought Kansas did a really good job defending the short stuff. Texas and Ewers, the intermediate stuff for Texas today was money. I will be curious to go look and see what his final passing numbers look like with throws between 10 and 20 yards. But Ewers was sensational today in those intermediate throws. The touchdown ball that he throws to Mitchell in the corner of the end zone, that was a tremendous throw. Like, Ewers had a really good game. You know what? Better to get that monkey off the back. He's going to throw a pick at some point.
Yeah.
That was a totally inconsequential play. Like, Kansas gets the ball back. There's no time left. Do you want it to happen? No. Do you want to come away with points at the end of the second quarter? Yes. Do you want clock management to be better? Yes. But better for Ewers to get that. Just, he's gotten lucky a few times this season.
Got lucky on another one in this game. Another
throws an interception. Now you don't have. That's not a talking point going in to the OU game, right? Ewers hasn't thrown an interception. It just feels like you're almost setting him up to throw an interception.
You think Sam Ehlinger celebrates that play? Sam's like, yes, I still got the record. Sam's such a Longhorn. I mean, he loves the Longhorns, so I don't know. He's probably got mixed emotions on that play. But, hey, I was just seeing like some of the comments on Twitter that Sark, I guess he's doing his post game right now. I didn't even realize this, but he talked about the balance. 325 passing yards, 336 rushing yards for Texas. I mean, first off, those are both high numbers. And secondly, you're damn near 50-50. I mean, you really couldn't script it better than that on offense, man. That's incredible.
Let me interrupt you here just to say these are Steve Sarkisian's comments on the Jatavion Sanders injury. Quote, "We're hopeful we're going to get him back for next week. Not a broken bone or a torn ligament, but how bodies respond is how bodies respond. We didn't feel like it would be in the best interest to put him back out there." End quote.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's kind of almost what I suspected. Just the fact that he was even on the sidelines watching, walking around, yes, in a boot, that gave me hope for good news for JT Sanders when I saw that. So about what I expected, but that's good for Texas.
I mean, it sounds like that'll just come down to his comfort, right? Like how well does he feel on that ankle? It'll come down to pain tolerance, mobility. But the fact that it's not amazing, if this was 2 weeks ago, I don't think, then you're like, well, it's 2 weeks away. You might even be talking about maybe giving the Kansas game off. By the way, Iowa State just scored. Now they're going to make it 7-7 pending the extra point. A little bit of a barn burner in Norman so far.
That comment by Stark almost sounds like he could have gone back in this game if they actually really needed him. Didn't think it would be in his best interest to put him back out there. So, I mean, that makes it sound like it was a possibility. If they needed him, he could have even come back this week. So I'm taking that as a pretty positive update.
Let me ask you this. The single biggest positive for real quick, actually, let's finish out our super chats. We got $1.99, $4.99 here from BK. Coach Choice keeps on ticking. Is he poached next year?
Man, listen, Tashard Choice is a freaking rock star, man. When you factor in his ability as a recruiter, I mean, what he's done with the running back production, the room, it just seems like an awesome dude too, man. He really does. But I remember when he got hired. Okay, listen, I'll tell a little backstory here. Who's the dude that always wants the backstory? I always forget. But here's a little backstory. So Choice was going to USC, and I think he'd been there like maybe a week or something like that. Our guy who runs our Georgia Tech site actually got to know Tashard Choice pretty well. Kelly Quinlan, good dude. Kelly tipped me off about Choice. He's like, hey, dude, he's going to come to Texas. And so we were able to break that story because of Rivals.com contacts. But I was told then that Tashard Choice's ultimate goal is he wants to be the head coach at Georgia Tech. So I don't know what their coaching situation is. I don't know. I don't see him leaving Texas unless it's for, maybe a head coaching job or a coordinator type job. I mean, where's he going to go that's a better running back job than at Texas? I mean, obviously the pay is great. You got a great recruiting base. I mean, he's recruiting lights out. He's got a talented room and more guys coming in that are elite talent. So it's a legitimate concern. I understand, because he's such a good coach. Like, you think teams are going to poach him, but unless like an NFL team wants to hire him as a running backs coach or maybe a head coaching position, like I said, I don't know how true that is. I was told, hey, his dream was to be a head coach and be a head coach at Georgia Tech. So we'll see how the dominoes fall, but I'm not losing sleep about Texas losing to Tashard Choice just yet, but he'll have some options for sure. He's a great coach and a great recruiter.
I'm not so sure that his next job's not as a head coach.
Maybe I don't think it'd be at a school like Georgia Tech.
Exactly.
But maybe a small one, and then 5 years later, he is the head coach at a place like Georgia Tech. So,
and I do think he'll eventually be the head coach at Georgia Tech. I mean, honestly, if that job comes open, he's such an insane recruiter. I
think it'd be a smart hire, man. The guy's
you do a lot worse than going to get a legacy guy who might not leave at the first job that comes open. The
Parents love him, recruits love him. I mean, he's just there's no weakness to Tashard Choice's game. Lack of experience, I guess, would be the one thing you could say. But just a tremendous coach and recruiter. I mean, I think he'd do well.
I think his next job is a head coaching job at Georgia Tech. Just a hunch, and that might mean if you're Texas, hey, he's making a load of money. So to pull him from Texas, you might have to give him I don't know. He's already getting paid a lot. So I think
now you got me looking. I'm looking to see what Georgia Tech's season is looking like. Texas better.
It's not great.
You're not. So I was like, Texas fans need to hope Georgia Tech's not in for a coaching search. Yeah.
Jake says, also, can we not run Quinn up 20? Made me cringe. I mean, if he's going to – look, I thought they handled it well. I thought they pulled when the first team offense got the ball, there's about 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And I was like, okay, no matter what happens on this drive, just try to run 2 or 3 minutes off, get it to 7 minutes. If you punt, you punt. By the way, Texas did not punt today. And then put in the second string offense. And they ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. So, they finished the game. I think Sark will feel really good about the way the team finished the fourth quarter, finished in the second half. I've seen him give the defense a lot of credit, basically saying they only gave up 2 plays the entire game, which is true. Have you ever seen where Bean fumbles and the ball gets knocked backwards and it goes right to a KU player and he runs it in? Have you ever seen that off the top of your head? Is there a play that I thought of, the immaculate reception?
That's the one that popped into mind. That wouldn't have fumbled, but I'm sure I've seen it, but I can't call it up. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you and I will watch a lot of college football.
Yeah.
We're going to watch it for the rest of the season. I don't think we're going to see that play. It was just –
who was it that scored the touchdown? Was it Neal that scored the touchdown? I don't remember. But, it was great awareness, but it came right to him and who's the player for Texas, number 1?
Well, Catalan is the one that forced the fumble.
Catalan forced it, but Finkley's like, what? When that dude scooped it up, Finkley's like, he didn't have a chance. It all happened so quickly. But, just a really lucky bounce and right place, right time for Kansas on that play.
And I don't even know how you officially score that play. I'm looking into the stat book right now. They only have 1 touchdown receiving.
Yeah,
and it shows them with no touchdowns rushing.
I'm looking on the scoring sheet. It says Jason Bean 27-yard rushing.
Except they're not officially giving Bean, from what I can see in the official stats.
Is that just a fumble?
They've got Bean for 7.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird one.
You'd think it would be, I don't remember who ran it in, but you'd think it'd be that person, 15-yard fumble recovery. But the touchdown says Jason Bean 27-yard rush, but then you look at the individual stats and he doesn't have a touchdown. So I don't know how that gets sorted out.
By the way, man, I'm crushed on I think I lost $1,500 on the Sanders. I've hit on all of my plays today, except except for one. I have a bunch of different Prize Picks plays going. Sanders being unable to finish the game is the only miss I had from like winning on every single stat. Like,
I got some good news for you. They're going to reboot that entry, so it's not going to count, and you're not going to lose. So,
how do you know that?
It says reboot on my app. I'm looking at it, and if a player, they have a new rule where if a player gets injured in the first half, does not come back in the second half, it does not count. So.
Wow, I'm surprised that they would do that. I would not do that.
I know, right? Hey, tough shit.
Yep.
Hey, what if you had Sanders on the less, though? So would you – I wonder – because then you'd be pissed, right?
Well, maybe the less hits, but as far as – it says refunded on mine because I had the more.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool of Prize Picks if that's true. If they're giving people that had the less, they'll get the win, and then good for Prize Picks if that's what they're doing. So.
Oh, good for them. I mean, it shows that I'm up $400 on the day, so something happened. But I'm telling you, had I hit, I would have been 6 for 6. Now, I don't know. I'll have to look, but it's been a good day. All I know is I'm looking at my Prize Picks deal, and so far, so good. After 2 losing weeks, I'm back in the game. Okay. Do we have any more? Let me see. I know that there's a question I want to ask you. Let me get this one last super chat in so that we're completely caught up. $5 from William. Interested to see what happens if Texas goes down 21-7. Will they still be as good of a second half team under pressure? I mean, I'm not interested to see that, William. Here's hoping that doesn't happen next week and we find out there. I mean, look, I don't even know how to answer that. I guess we're all interested. It is a scenario that we haven't seen all year long, but I'm not that interested to see it happen. I'm okay with Texas playing in front, staying ahead. And at this point, all you can do is give them credit, William. They played 5 games. I think in 3 of the 5, we wouldn't say that was an A performance in the first half. Rice, Wyoming, and Kansas today, it wasn't an A first half. But you'd have to say that in every game they played, it's been an A second half. And so, I think even without stretching the boundaries of, well, let's see what happens if they're down 2 scores and whether or not they're still a good second half team. I mean, they are a good second half team at this point. No asterisks next to it in my estimation. At this point, they just are. But yeah, I mean, let's see what happens as we go further down. There will be a game at some point this season where Texas will have to play from behind. So I hope it's not next week. Let's hope it's a game where it's obvious, like, oh, they're down 21-7 to Iowa State. It's like, I think they'll be okay. No matter what, no matter the conditions of that game, I think they'd be okay in that scenario. But some 14-point deficits are different than other 14-point deficits. Okay. What is the single biggest positive from your perspective to take out of this game? And also give me the single biggest concerning.
Good question. Single biggest positive, probably I'd say the offensive balance and the continued ability to run the ball effectively when it matters. Jonathan Brooks' production. I think the offensive balance, Quinn did his thing. The running game was impressive. So I'll go with offensive balance for my biggest positive. Biggest concern is just kind of the sluggish starts again and leaving points on the field. I don't want to say this was a sloppy game. They won 40-14 for Pete's sake. But, there were moments when you're like, damn, what is Texas doing here with the missed field goals and just missed opportunities here and there? So I still think this Texas team is, 40-14 is impressive. I still think this Texas team can be a lot better. I would give it, if I'm grading this performance as a whole for the team, I'd probably give it like a B+, which is pretty crazy considering they won by 26 points against a ranked opponent. So, but I do think there's some things they can clean up. And these slow starts, you mentioned Wyoming and Rice and today, They can't do that next week, man. They do that next week, they might be down 21-7, as the super chat just said. I mean, Texas needs to be able to start a little quicker next week. And moving forward, I do think they need to find a way to be better in the first half of these games that are going to be a little bit tougher coming up.
By the way, wild game in Oxford right now. It's 31-28 Ole Miss over LSU. Second quarter score.
Wow.
I mean, that's an old school whack shootout at this point. Mark jumps into the super chat and says, thank you, Mark, for your $1.99. Quinn is getting better each week. What say you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought he was I think he was probably better last week than he was this week, but I thought he was really good this week. I mean, yeah, the interception is going to be something people talk about because the streak came to an end. He started off those first couple drives were bang, bang, bang. I mean, he had the 2 touchdown runs. So, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that, Mark. I mean, I thought last week was a really, really good performance, but I think he's certainly better the last couple weeks than he was the beginning of the season. The Alabama game was fantastic, but most of that was really in one quarter when he kind of tore it up there. So, but yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think he's kind of hitting his stride as they get in the knee deep into conference play and playing really good football.
I thought it was about the same, which is, I hope it's perceived as a compliment to a pretty high level of football that he's playing at. You know, you look at the passing numbers, the accuracy thing is the accuracy thing. At this point, almost halfway through the season, you just got to know that during the course of a game, Quinn's just going to have a few balls get away from him. He had a few today that weren't accurate. So he ends up completing 71% of his passes, which is kind of in line with where he's been all season long. You know, I think about his adjusted completion percentage when you include drops is in that territory. He's got a 153.1 game rating. If you went by the ESPN QBR, I'm sure his numbers look the QBR rating, which
it's not out yet, but yeah.
I don't completely understand it, but when you score 2 touchdowns rushing and you run for 40 yards, you're going to get an uptick with that as well. I thought it was really good. I didn't think it was the best performance that we've seen from Quinn Ewers, but it was really good. And that you're getting really good, I think, on a weekly basis is really good.
Yeah, he's just went over 1,000 yards on the season too with a 300-yard performance today. So 153.1 rating. I mean, he was at almost 200 last week. Maybe
he wasn't as good as he was last week.
Not throwing the ball, but like you said, he did have a rushing touchdown last week, but he had 2 this week, so you can't discount that either, man. So,
I even think last week's rushing touchdown was a little more impressive. Boy, that Kansas defense parted ways. Although, give him credit for showing some wheels and he
definitely looked pretty athletic. Yeah,
Chubby Quinn does not get to the pylon on that last touchdown run. He does not beat 90. Whoever 90 is for Kansas doesn't beat him to the pylon like he did this. So, I mean, again, another performance for him to build on. I really am not too worried about the interception. I mean, it was less than ideal, but
that was a bad decision. And I don't think that ball was going to get to Gunnar Helm anyways. It was way behind. I don't know what was going on there.
Well, I didn't. That was part of we're going to treat Gunnar Helm like he's Jatavion Sanders, and we're just going to run our offense. And maybe if Sanders for any reason is limited next week, today was a good learning lesson for them. Don't throw that little screen pass to Helm. No offense to Gunnar Helm either. He's just not Jatavion Sanders, and you can't. I think the real nerdy football discussion that we were having during the watch along that I think the staff will have to have this week is their 2 big personnel groupings are 12 personnel and 11 personnel. That's what they do. And I think they run 11 personnel about 40% of the time. And I think they run 11 about 40% of the time. And they run 12 about 30% of the time. If you don't have Sanders available to you, I think you have to ditch the 12 personnel outside of obvious,
I guess Juan Davis.
Yeah.
No
I think they're actually playing the walk-on.
Oh, really?
I think so.
I saw Juan in there, on the jumbo package when they ran the touchdown when Murphy comes in at fullback. But yeah, I don't remember seeing Juan Davis out there any other plays. Not that I was necessarily looking exactly for Juan Davis, but I know he was out there on the running plays, running package, jumbo package.
And I think when they go to 11 personnel, I think they've got to be real careful. When they go to if, right? Because the hope was going to be that Jatavion Sanders plays next week and there aren't any issues at all. But if he's not in the game, when you go to they go to their standard 11 personnel and they've got Whittington and Helm on the field together, that means two of your true 4 passing attack targets aren't guys that the defense worries about. And we've seen a lot of coverage.
It's weird to say that about Whittington, but it's true. But
it's now 20 straight games since he's had a touchdown. He had 2 catches today for, was it
18 yards?
18 yards?
6 targets today, which was surprising. I don't remember that. But yeah, 2 for 18 is all. So, I mean, he's just kind of a forgotten man almost at this point.
I mentioned earlier in the week, and I took some heat on our show House Divided with Chad Hastings when I said, here's a hot take that nobody wants to say out loud, but I think Jonte Cook needs to be replacing Jordan Whittington when they go into 3 wide receiver sets. They put him on the field today, 1 for 26. He just gives you a big play threat that Jordan Whittington doesn't. Jason, you and I know we both love Jordan Whittington. Is an awesome human being. He's a great story. There aren't like some guys you root for all the guys, I suppose, right? But some guys you root for more than others, and Jordan Whittington is one of those guys. But I would feel real homerish if I was discussing Whittington right now as a game changer, as somebody that's a real threat. He hasn't been a game changer so far this season. He really wasn't a year ago. Now we're talking about a year and a half's worth of results. Again, 20 straight games without a touchdown. And it's not all, well, Quinn Ewers just won't throw him the ball. No, it's not the case.
It's 6 targets. I mean, that's not for lack of trying to get him the ball. I mean, just when you see, listen, I don't want to turn this into a bash on Jordan Whittington, but when you see Whittington catch the ball, and he runs with power, right? He gives a lot of effort. But the explosiveness Jonte brings when he gets that ball in his hands, you're like, oh, shit, he might take it to the house anytime from anywhere. So I'm with you, man. I said that in my post-game thoughts.
How about this, though, Jason? 2 stats for you. Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy were targeted 20 times today.
Mm-hmm.
They caught 17. 17, catching 85% of your targets to your primary wide receivers. That is a stat I love. We were just talking about Quinn Ewers' completion percentage and adjusted completion percentage once you include drops and like what it looks like. His completion percentage today was 71%. His completion percentage today when targeting Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy was 85%. So those are your 2. With Sanders out, they got the ball to their 2 big dogs, and those guys rewarded them. The other number that I wanted to give, Jason, 2nd straight game now without a drop.
Yeah, I don't remember any drops in this game. It's funny on our Prize Picks preview show where we make our prediction show, I guess I should say. I think it was on that show. I kind of said, like, we haven't seen – I don't think you were on this week, but I said we haven't seen the Adonai Mitchell breakout game yet.
Yeah.
Like, he's been pretty good, but like we heard all fall camp about this dude's amazing and like he's going to be the number, 1st round draft pick. I said we haven't seen that version of Adonai Mitchell. I mean, he's caught some touchdowns. He's made a couple big plays, of course, but he hasn't truly been dominant. Then he comes out today, 10 for 141. Like you said, 10 catches on 13 targets. Xavier was actually 7 for 7 on his targets. So, I was a little surprised early in the game. I was like, damn, Xavier Worthy only had, I think it was 2 targets, like maybe in the first half or something like that.
Yeah.
Something crazy. So, I mean, I was shocked especially Xavier had a kind of a subpar game against Baylor statistically. So I thought for sure this week they'd come out and just kind of force feed him the ball a little bit. They didn't. And it was Adonai Mitchell that was getting peppered with a lot of targets. But yeah, those 2 they're both playing at a high level. And that's a heck of a 1-2 punch with both those guys. And, Whittington, I'm going back to Whittington catch. I'm looking, he was good against Alabama. You give him credit for that, but since then, he's gone for 14, 19, and 18 yards in the last 3 games. So he's just, I don't want to say he's a non-factor, but he kind of a little bit of a forgotten man in the offensive attack.
Mitchell had 3 catches for 49 yards on the first drive of the game. They came out early, determined to get the ball to him. I wonder if that was because they wanted to get the ball to Adonai Mitchell, or was there something that was taking place? One of the things that Sark has been saying is that the teams have been throwing coverage towards Xavier Worthy. Well, they punished. If Kansas was doing that today, they punished them with Adonai Mitchell. Nick asks for $1.99 in the super chat. Thank you, Nick. What are your thoughts on the OU defense? An OU defense, Jason, that comes into their game against Iowa State today, ranked number 1 in the Big 12 in total yardage. Like, they are on paper the number 1 offense and defense in the Big 12. The eyeball test
in the red zone.
Yeah. The eyeball test tells me they're okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't watched a ton of Oklahoma. I'm ashamed to admit I'm recording this game, so I want to go back and really pour into this game a little bit. But, yeah, like you said, even on offense, they don't have just a big dynamic names, I mean, Iowa State's scored a touchdown already, and they're possibly looking to tie it up here in the first quarter. So I think Texas can have a lot of success next week. Hey, so I just Google searched Sarkisian because I'm just trying to see where he's at with his press conference and stuff. And I searched for the most latest tweet with Sark's name. College football top 5 punchable faces. This dude has Ryan Day 1, Brian Kelly, Sark 3, Lane Kiffin, Kirby Smart. So I'm like,
wow. Okay.
Sark, some of those guys I agree with, but what's Sark ever do? Sark doesn't have a punchable face. I think Sark's got a pleasant face. So
yeah, I tend to agree with you. I've got thoughts on his game management, timeouts and things like that, but not a punchable face.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Come on, get him off that list.
All right, Jason, it's almost your time to bid farewell because right now, live from DKR in the press box, looking sharp, sharp as like a $20 knife. It is Anwar Richardson. I love the jacket tie combo, Anwar. Nice job.
Thank you. By the way, Catch, this was totally intentional, and you'll appreciate this. Because of the red in the tie, I knew I had to wear it this week and not next week because, God forbid, with college football game wars, if I somehow wear the wrong color on someone's turf, they're like, oh, shoot, are you down with OU? Yo, get that guy. So I understood. You better do it now. Can't do it next week.
All right. Well, we saw Jatavion. We saw your tweet kind of relaying what Sarkisian said about Jatavion Sanders. So we know that, they felt like it wasn't a good thing to put him back in, but they're hopeful he'll be available next week. Beyond that, we haven't really talked about anything that would have been said in the postgame. So give us an idea of Sarkisian's comments after the game and any opening impressions you might have.
Yeah, I actually did see Jatavion after the game. He did have a boot on, but to your point, Sark said it, nothing structural. His main thing, what Sark was saying was, it's all about how the body reacts. So he's like, there's nothing structural, nothing broken. It just depends on how that body is going to react this week. So they're optimistic that they'll be able to get him back for the upcoming week. As relates to the things that he said and the things that he talked about. So, can I tell you that I'm going to tell you some of the good stuff, and then there was a snarky Sark moment that happened in there. Which we're starting to see a little bit more of that personality coming out from him. So, but I think this one will be somewhat justified, right? So anyway, so he's really obviously happy about the win, right? He's very happy. He said they were really balanced on offense. And that was something that he thought was going to be critical for them. And, he felt really good about what they were able to do from a passing side to having a guy like Jonathan Brooks rush for over 200 yards. He felt like they were explosive on offense as well. Maybe not throwing it up top, but being able to have the explosive plays in the windows that were available to them. he liked what they were able to clearly do in the red zone. The red zone, I believe they converted every time, Catch, if I'm correct, in the red zone, which was something that you and I had talked about on Friday. I talked on my show that you get into the red zone against Kansas, you're pretty much going to score. I mean, it's just kind of what they do. So he was very happy with being able to convert the red zone, some critical drives there in the fourth quarter. Obviously wishes they wouldn't have maybe have had a better start. But he said one of the things he told them going into halftime was like, hey, no, at the end of the day, they're still playing extremely well. Sure, this is what the score is at, but just know they're, basically they're playing extremely well. And it feels pretty good about what they were able to do. Feels good that they, been able to rebound after the loss of Jatavian Sanders. Obviously, Adonai Mitchell steps up and has a big game for them. So, felt really good about what he was able to do. And of course, Xavier being able to be effective as well. So he feels great when they're trying to take away Xavier, that other guys have stepped up. And again, having guys step up without Jatavian, who's usually that guy that they would kind of lean on. Let me see what else he kind of spoke about. I'm just kind of going through some of the notes here. Talked about the second half as well. Talked about the third quarter as well. Very proud. Catch, you'll appreciate this. I asked him about Jonathan Brooks again. Very proud about Jonathan. Said, one thing about Brooks is that but the one thing he's doing really well now is when he gets in the open field, he's actually making safeties miss. He's like, if you can do that and trust your blocks and trust the run, like and make those guys miss, now all of a sudden you have explosive plays. He described Jonathan Brooks as a home run hitter for his ability to do that now. And he said, really, if you think back for the last couple of years, that's what he's been able to do. But Catch, you'll appreciate this. Then he goes, but I'm also really proud of Cedric, because he's not 100%, and for him to go out there and have the 16 carries and he's learning how to play, and he goes, and that was really impressive too. So he'll only go so far, and he'll go right there and be like, but I got my boo, right? And I still got my boo, but this new boo thing is good, and he's great, but I still got Cedric. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I didn't hear you, Ken.
It's hard to manage multiple boos at the same time.
It is. It really is. It's a juggling act. It's a huge juggling act. You can't praise one too much.
Sometimes they give you watches and then you get in trouble. Like it's hard out there to manage the multiple boos.
Yes. So, so I think overall he was happy. About that, about what they were able to do. He did talk about somebody asked him about not scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And, coaches, a lot of times after a good win and you start going into like the negatives of things that they do, they ain't trying to hear all that right now.
They would not have loved Orangebloods at halftime.
The questions they want is like stuff. They don't want any to, hey, coach, what's going on with your kickers? Like, why you got 2 scholarship kickers and these guys aren't consistent, right? So someone asked him about the red zone issue, and he goes, an old friend of mine said stats are like something that, and I guess he held himself back and goes, I don't care about stats. We keep winning. We get, and that's all that really matters to him. And I don't get caught up in what stats say. And then after that, he wasn't happy for a little while because you can tell that pissed him off just a little bit. But outside of that, Catch, I think he was really happy to be at, at the 5-0 position right now. He obviously touched on OU and he said he didn't know when the game's being played, but he obviously knows what to expect from OU coming next week. But overall, kind of what you would expect, Catch, from a guy, sitting at 5-0. And then last thing I'll say is that he also praised, DJ Campbell and said he's a guy that's kind of growing up and becoming a veteran right now. And he also thought Malik Agbo did a very good job when he got in there as well. So I think overall, kind of what you would expect, Catch. Nothing too crazy, nothing too much out of the ordinary as far as the press conference is concerned. Now, if you ask me what I'm thinking, let me be quite honest with you. What I'm thinking is kind of what I'm writing for tomorrow. So it'll coincide. And hopefully, if you say some cool stuff, I'll have more things to write, but not about you, but I'll have more thoughts in my head. I mean, I think at the end of the day, for me, Catch, I mean, it's hard to argue against Texas being the number one team in the country right now. I mean, the thing when you look at them having 2 wins against ranked opponents, which none of the teams ahead of them can say they have. The smallest margin of victory is 10 points on the road versus Bama. When you add it up, and I tweeted this out. The average margin of victory through 5 games, average margin of victory, Catch, is 23 points. I mean, 23 points is the average at this moment. So, every victory has been in double digits. It's a good resume. And if they do that again next week against OU, and that would be the 3rd ranked team that they would have success against, it should be unquestionable at that point. But for me, it's hard to walk away when we look at college football right now and not really looking at a ton of dominant teams. Hard for me to walk away not saying from a resume standpoint, Texas has the most impressive resume. So that's kind of what Sark said, and that's kind of where my thoughts are after the game.
Jason, any thoughts, or do we want to? I realize we might have been able to let you go early. You got anything you want to toss to Anwar, or you want to say bid farewell?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I'll agree with Anwar. I've been going back a couple of weeks. I was the guy that said, "Hey, they need to earn this top 5 ranking. They're not playing like a top 5 team in that Wyoming game." Well, this is back-to-back weeks. I mean, the Baylor game was a good ass kicking, and this is a pretty good Kansas team. I get it; their quarterback was out, but that's a good backup quarterback that's played well. So, I agree with you, Elmore. Would I vote Texas number 1? Probably not. But if anybody that does, I certainly don't have a problem with it. And if they beat Oklahoma next week, nobody has a better resume than Texas. So they should garner a lot of first place votes. I tend to agree with you. Now they just got to keep it up and keep the momentum rolling.
Is that it for you, Jason? I'll let you get out of here. And on.
Yeah, I'm going to get on the board and try to make sure no craziness going on and respond to some of the stuff on my my thread and stuff. So I'll let you guys bring it home.
Thanks for blasting as well, or blasting
celebratory blasting. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a blasting happens next week for sure.
Jason, have a good rest of the Saturday night, my man.
All right, guys. We'll see you.
Onward, we'll knock out some of these super chats just to completely catch up. Money B had one right when we came on.
He said what?
Money B. Money B says, hook 'em. What are your thoughts on PK?
I mean, Money, I think I've been very consistent, on PK. I mean, he is living up to all of all the expectations of what he was supposed to be when getting hired out of Washington. I think he's living up to all of that right now. I think, and I know Ketch would agree. I think Ketch and I all about right and wrong, and we thought it was a little bit wrong that, Gary Patterson was getting a lot of the credit for the defense showing some improvement last year. Gary Patterson is not here. The defense is better than they were last year. You've seen the emergence not only of the veteran guys that they inherited, and you can see like what those guys have been able to do and then, of course, you see the emergence of some of the young guys as well. I think PK is proving himself to be worth what he's getting paid, that 1.7. Like, that's what you pay a guy like that for. You pay a guy like that to get those defensive results, Money B, but you pay him because he's good enough where if someone comes and gives him an offer, he's making enough money where it's got to be something that's special that really moves the needle for him. So to me, PK, to go on the road, Money, to do what they did against Bama as well as they did. I mean, Ole Miss couldn't beat Bama, even though, you know what I'm saying? So I think for me, for my money, PK is coaching at an elite level. This defense is playing at an elite level, and they're getting productivity out of guys. And Catch, I talked about this last week, out of guys that the David Bendas of the world, the Jet Bushes of the world. We're seeing Taft out there. It's not just the Tavondres and Byron Murphys. There's other guys who are throwing contributions in there. And yeah, the defense may give up something here and there, but Catch Sarkisian said, hey, at the end of the day, this defense gave up 2 big plays against Kansas. He goes, they're 2 explosive plays. He goes, and outside of that, they were able to contain this team for the majority of the game. So yeah, He's the man at this point.
I will mention it was we were robbed of a better game with the injury to Jalen Daniels. Shocking. Onward, you won't believe it. I was in the middle of the watch along right at the very beginning. And I go, hey, for one of the first times in like a month, we're not sitting at the beginning of the game, like waiting for an injury report to let us know whether or not the other team's backup quarterback's going to have to play. Because we've seen it with C.J. Baxter, but we saw Wyoming play the backup last week in Waco. There was a thought, are they actually going to start Sawyer Robertson? Are they going to start another guy? The Jalen Daniels back injury just kind of comes out of nowhere. I think
could you imagine a world? Could you imagine a world where Quinn is going to play in a game and we don't have any reports on our website that it's a possibility that he would not play, and then all of a sudden, right before kickoff, he's not playing?
Could you know how that would go? Why do I even have a subscription to Orangebloods.com? You guys don't know anything.
I was like, what world do you live? Can you live in with that? The biggest guy / the only guy on the team that anybody knows, nothing crept out before the game. Like, wow, we were covering the wrong team. Talk about no pressure.
I mean, it was completely surprising.
Yeah.
And, it changes the game. I mean, look, it's funny because at the end of the thing, it's like a 26-point win. You look at the final numbers, there were substantial. Texas dominated in every single category that you could pretty much dominate in, I guess, other than turnovers, which ends up being 1-1. But, there was a conversation in the first half of what does this game look like if Jalen Daniels is actually playing? It's 13-6 at halftime. And there's no way to get around the fact that you're playing you're playing a Kansas team playing with one arm tied behind their back. As nice as Jason wants to be about Jason being, if that guy was a college starter, he's like a 4. And we think Daniels is an 8. So, it does change the game. But look, it doesn't matter. I mean, Texas wins the game by 4 touchdowns. No one will think about this game unless unless Sanders doesn't play next week. This game's kind of inconsequential. I mean, it's the game before OU. They handled their business. Was it a little sloppy in the first half? Yeah, they didn't execute. They missed some field goals. Sark didn't handle clock management very well. But at the end of the day, boy, you got to try real hard to nitpick a 26-point win. I just will say, I think the entire thing, if you get a healthy Jalen Daniels, we would have seen the Texas defense stressed in ways that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise seen them stressed. I'm curious to have seen what that would have looked like. If you're Texas, by the way, I'm looking at this Iowa State game. Did they just score again? They did. So now it's Oklahoma 21-16. First play of the second quarter, Iowa State scores a touchdown. Somebody had just asked us about the Oklahoma defense. Not looking good. They just let Iowa State go like 62 on what was just poor defense. All right.
But can I say something real quick to add in onto that? Not OU. I've covered this team my tenure where sometimes the backup coming in was almost a death sentence for Texas, because I've seen plenty of backups come in and do damage against the Longhorns throughout the years.
They're better now than they've been before, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Kansas didn't catch a break today because they had to play their backup.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm not disagreeing with you. I am just saying I am old enough to remember that if you put it back up again against Texas, that might have been like the death blow for the team. So that has happened.
Well, and it didn't help 2 weeks ago against Wyoming when Sark admittedly said they kind of struggled at like being thrown something that they weren't prepared for. So, I mean, it was a legitimate question to wonder, hey, at least for 15 minutes in the first quarter, was it a problem? JR put $9.99 into the super chat, but then he didn't put a question. So I went back through the chat, and this was the question that I saw him ask. JR, apologies if this wasn't what you wanted to ask on the super chat, but it's all I could find. Are we really okay with how long it took PK to adjust the KU's offense with their backup quarterback. Perfect timing. Was Texas afraid of his arm? Were they where they couldn't spare an extra guy on the line?
Bean completes 9 of 21 passes for 136 yards, 1 touchdown, and a passer rating of 113. I mean, 7 carries for 42, not a factor in my opinion. So I don't think there was any fear with this guy. I mean, and at the end of the day, Kansas scores 14 points. It's just one of these things. I think like what Catch just said, like you got to search high and low if you're going to look for something to nitpick. And you can potentially nitpick, but if you're nitpicking your defense only giving up 14 points and giving up a passer rating of 113 and a guy who throws for $136, I mean, okay. I mean, I guess you can. I just think it's trying too hard if that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. South End Zone Queen jumps in to the super chat and says, Horns win, hook 'em. I made it on TV. Did you see me? 4:25 left in the third. South End Zone Queen, I did not see it, but I will be rewatching the game tonight. And now that you've given me a time code, I'll be looking for it. She is the queen. We've named her the Queen of House Divided. And maybe she's the queen of the post-game show. At this point, there's not even any competition. Thank you, South End Zone Queen. Hope you had a good time at the game today. And thank you for the super chat. Speaking of super chat, Tom G jumps in for $25. Thank you, Tom G. Looking good, my man.
Thank you, Tom.
Whoa. Why are you assuming that he's talking to you? I have the lucky shirt on.
Because of what he said in the second part of the sentence, it was a reference that I made on my show. So the second part of the sentence, Tom G, let's just say I don't need any pills tonight, baby. That's all I gotta tell you. Maybe the purple.
Somebody getting ready for the blue. You know what? I'm not going to touch the comment. I'm going to let you finish on war, and I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Tom, I'll tell you like this. So the purple pill catch is what I talked about. There's a purple pill that's on Amazon. You get on Amazon. So if you drink or something like that, make sure you don't have a hangover the next day. It helps you for the liver. It's gives you vitamins and this and that. The blue pill is kind of the obvious one, right? And so I may mention the things I may or may not be doing this weekend, and I think that's what Tom is referencing. Hence, that's why he went back to looking good, my man. Taji, smile on my face is all I got to tell you. We're good. Leave it at that.
Anwar is a happy man, apparently.
Very happy.
Speaking of super chats, we got one more, and then we'll be completely caught up. And there's actually Michael, my business. Sorry about that. Get cooking with gas. Cool in more. Is that a drunk super chat?
I don't know what that means. Cooking with gas. Maybe they had to, I don't know what that means. He said, see, yeah, clearly.
That's funny. As it turns out, yes, that is our first drunk super chat of the night. Michael,
buddy.
Yes. By the way, I'm not going to do it. I feel like I'm a huge Jatavion Sanders. I'm a huge Jordan Whittington hater when I keep saying that Jonte Cook needs to be playing more in the passing game. But yes, Jonte Cook comes in, right? Because that's what he was talking about, right?
Yeah.
Cook with gas, Cook in more. Tom G says Cook needs to replace Jay Witt. Tom, I'm letting you know, I said that on my show on Wednesday, I think it was. People did not like it, but Jordan Whittington has not scored a touchdown in 20 straight games. He had 2 catches for 18 yards. One of the things I said at the beginning of the postgame show on War is that if Sanders, for any reason next week, can't play or is severely limited, I think you got to do away with the 12 personnel. That becomes a loser for you if you're Texas at that point. And if he's really limited, I question how much 11 personnel you play, because your 2 of your 4 receiving targets, not including the running back, at that point are Jordan Whittington and Gunnar Helm, two players who just quite simply do not stoke fear into the hearts of opposing defenses. It puts a lot of pressure on Mitchell and Worthy. And those two dudes came in today and balled. They combined for 17 receptions. They were only targeted 20 times. That's an 85% completion percentage for Quinn Ewers when he threw to his main two guys at wide receiver. They're not getting enough elsewhere in the offense. I think if you were going to nitpick the offense a little bit today, on a day when they had like a bazillion yards, you'd say, man, in the passing game, other than Whittington other than Worthy and Mitchell, not enough other guys contributed with Jatavian going down. And, I think against a better team, believe me, OU sitting around right now praying that Sanders doesn't play or is limited, because I think they think they'd be able to scheme their way around limiting Mitchell and Worthy and making Whittington and Helm and the Texas running game beat them. I feel like there has to be a better third target other than Sanders. And to me, it's Jonte Cook.
I like Jonte's big play potential, but there are going to be some of the here's the challenge with that one, Catch, and this is what I would have to get determined when it comes. Adonai Mitchell is very, very good as far as a pass catcher, not really much of a blocker right now. And so then I don't know where Jonte is as far as that thing is concerned. And so I know you'll at least get that from Jordan, but again, I'd have to determine. I'm not going to speak where he is or isn't, but I think a young guy asking him to block consistently, when you already got one guy out there, that's just not what that's not his strength. You already got Xavier Worthy, who has lean muscle. Like, the good thing about Jordan that he gives you is that blocker on the field that will help you. So that would be my only hesitation on Jonte at this point. But from playmaking and explosiveness, and if I need points, I need that guy out there. 100%. By the way, that's always been my pushback when people have talked about like Jordan and NFL picks and this and that. I'm like, he doesn't score touchdowns. That those guys don't get drafted. So, but I do think he's a very good college receiver, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I totally agree with you. And I don't think that he needs to replace Whittington like on a bunch of plays, but I think, if Whittington's playing 50% of the plays, he's in there a lot for his blocking. You don't want him to only be on the field for run plays, because then you're tipping your hand at what you're doing. But I think maybe 50% of the pass plays that he's in on, I would be replacing him with Jonte Cook. It just makes a more dynamic offense. But certainly, look, everybody loves Jordan Whittington. I don't think the story of the game needs to be Jordan Whittington being replaced. But as the season continues, he's a senior. He's an older guy. Like, at what point, if Sark talked about Cook the way that he talks about Baxter, Cook could be getting a lot more reps in the passing game, because Sark loves his boo, CJ Baxter.
What is it? Find you somebody that loves you like Sark loves CJ Baxter. If you can find that in life, you're doing good.
Benjamin says, buy or sell, we will face a better team next week with Oklahoma than what we faced at Alabama.
Sell. Right now, Catch, what's the score with them and Iowa State right now?
Iowa State is losing 21-17, but they have the ball. It's 1st and 10, still 11 minutes to go in the second quarter. It's kind of a shootout early on. But yeah, it's no. The thing is, they're going to have Dylan Gabriel this year. And what does it mean for Dylan Gabriel to play a team like Texas? Because historically in his career, when he plays ranked teams, I believe he has a 107 quarterback rating, maybe 113. I forget what it is. It's not very good. And I think his record in games against ranked teams is either 1-4 or 2-4. It's not good. Again, I don't have it completely memorized, but I did take a look at it a few weeks ago when I was making a point. I was like, oh man, he's just kind of a guy against ranked teams, but he's OU's guy. And, will he be a bigger threat next week than Milroe was a couple of weeks ago when Texas plays at Alabama? We know that Milroe ends up losing the job briefly and now is the starting quarterback again. I honestly don't know how to answer the question of who's better between Milroe and Dillon Gabriel, but I know how to answer the other question of who's better 21 players across both starting lineups of both teams, and it's Alabama.
Yeah. And to me, at the end of the day, to your point, Catch, we saw Dillon Gabriel last year. I mean, and I haven't seen, stuff that shows he's made that many strides between last year and this year. I mean, kind of is who he is. That statue that you gave was really interesting. Yeah. I mean, Texas right now, for what's left on the schedule, if Texas brings their A game and any other team on the schedule brings their A game, nobody can beat them. This is that simple.
That's true. And the thing is, they avoid Jalen Daniels today. Next week against Dillon Gabriel, that's the best quarterback they're going to face the rest of the season. I mean,
and where would you put Dillon from a numbers standpoint? Because we had Jalen at 8. So where would you put Gabriel?
He's like a 7.
Yeah.
He's at a 7, but I don't know against a good team he's ever had a game in his life where he's jumped up to an 8. He's not a guy that to me fluctuates. He's a guy that against bad to average competition, he's good.
Yeah.
And the moment the competition increases even slightly to like, hey, bottom of the top 25, then it gets a little screwy for him. He's just not that good. Good question, Benjamin. But at the end of the day, it's Alabama. Texas has already beaten the best team they'll play all season. And in avoiding Jalen Daniels, they may have already actually played the best quarterback that they'll play all this season in Jalen Milroe. I'm not trying to I think Milroe and Gabriel are very close, quite frankly. But again, Dillon Gabriel against really good teams is not really good. And that will be, to me, the talking point all season long. We got another super chat.
Ooh, keep them coming.
I'm not quite sure. Is it Cha? I don't know. Thank you for the $9.99.
It's chaos.
Oh, chaos.
Yeah, he just
spelled in a way that really is chaotic.
Yeah, it's chaos.
Dillon Gabriel is going to blow his sorry horn. I mean, it's a play on words for Gabriel until Gabriel blows his horn.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for $10, it's fine. I mean, it's very
We'll take more of that chaos. We don't care.
You can make a T-shirt of that. I don't think anybody would be offended by it.
By the way, Iowa State kicks a 46-yard field goal. It's now 21-20. Still very early to go in the second quarter. But ironically, Oklahoma kind of having a performance like Texas. They just showed that Oklahoma was averaging 9.3 yards per rush against the Iowa State offense. Then they made a stop. They held Iowa State to like the next carry for 3 yards. So that rushing yards per carry, probably pretty similar to what Kansas was doing to Texas in the first half. But kudos to the Texas defense and Pete Kwiatkowski. And the rushing average ends up going down to 5 yards per carry for the game. And if I told you before the game that Kansas would average 5 yards per carry, you might shrug your shoulders and go, well, that's okay, I guess. It's not ideal, but considering what was going on early in the game, they were taking advantage of the right side of that Texas defense. By the way, it looked like Ethan Burke got the start today instead of Jet Bush, and they came out early in the game running towards that side of the field. They found some success when running left. Texas eventually kind of just took care of that. In the end, I mean, it's again, Anwar said it. Boy, if you want to nitpick the game, knock yourself out. But it was a 26-point win at home against a ranked team. I mean, the spread was 15.5. Now, there was no Jalen Daniels, and as much as anybody will raise my hand and say, yeah, that mattered a little bit. But at the end of the day, Texas wins. Who cares about the what could have been? Texas advances. All that matters now is taking care of business next week against Oklahoma. And then I don't want to say you're home free, but boy, you are in a pathway that could potentially lead to some really big things. This isn't a super chat, but Gabriel wants to know any news on Watts.
No, there was nothing. Sark did not mention any of that.
That feels ominous, but we will see on Monday. There you go, Anwar. I've already lashed out at the Texas media and said that if we get to Monday and you don't get to ask a question until like 20 minutes in, if someone hasn't asked about Sanders at that point, that, I might just want to punch some people.
But imagine me. I'm like, I've got questions that I want to ask, and I'm like, well, shoot, now I gotta wait. I gotta shoot my shot on this one, like, because you only get like really one, So yeah, you and me both.
Please put some respect on Jay Brooks's name from this point forward. Catch. Can you also admit that Texas beats Washington with a healthy Jay Brooks? No, I cannot.
Oh God.
No.
I mean, put some respect on
Oh,
his
you're
name.
right. That 27-10 game in the fourth quarter completely flips if Jonathan Brooks plays. No. But absolutely put some respect on Jay Brooks' name. He goes for 2+ today. It was so weird. On that 67-yard run in the second quarter, it looked like he was carrying a piano on his back. Like he was 2 yards in front of everybody and just kind of got swallowed up. But then on the 55-yard run later in the game, he looked like he had a turbo rocket on his back. It was a tale of two long runs, but he is, look, man, look, hey, you're not talking to me. You're talking to the head coach right now. I'm not the one that is struggling to answer the question about who should be the starting running back for the team. I'm good with saying Jonathan Brooks with no buts, ands, or ors. I don't feel like I have the need to mention CJ Baxter at all. If that makes you feel any better.
Yeah, I mean, Brooks is doing he's taking advantage of his opportunities. Like that, at the end of the day, he wasn't named the starter at the beginning of the year. So, I mean, like you said, that's not an us thing. That was them. He wasn't named the starter at the beginning of the year. And but when he's come in, he's been very effective. And I think there's a part of me that wonders to a certain degree, like where they've seen it in practice, but then maybe just at a certain part, they're like, I don't know. Because here's the thing, Catch. If they really felt like Brooks would be doing this consistently, he'd be the starter, right? Hands down. They had to
shock the coaching staff.
They had to have felt that Baxter will be doing what Brooks is doing right now. And so I think right now they're just saying, hey, well, we just got to get CJ healthy. And when CJ gets healthy, then he'll do exactly what Brooks is doing. I think there is a little bit of a shock factor that he's doing this thing. I don't know if they would ever openly admit it, but I think they're like, I didn't see this one coming.
Well, look, Jonathan, let's just real quick, let's just have this. So Jonathan Brooks came into the game, I think, 16th in the nation in rushing. Like he hasn't even been the primary starter. He started slow, but he had a few 100-yard games in a row. Now he adds a 200. I'm curious to see where he'll be ranked nationally in rushing, but he only went up. He's now on pace to be the 1,000-yard running back that Sark before the season told us, I'll have my 1,000 yards. Don't worry about that. We're going to have a 1,000-yard running back. Right now, Jonathan Brooks is the guy who's on pace to have that kind of a season.
It's halfway there.
He is. He's over 500 yards now.
Yeah, he's halfway there through 5 games.
And, we're not officially at the halfway mark of the season. You've got a Big 12 championship game potentially to be played. and at least one bowl game, right? So they're definitely on pace. The thing is, he might have a situation where Jonathan Brooks ends up being like a 1,300-yard running back, and I think he knows, what the hell do I tell C.J. Baxter if Jonathan Brooks runs for 1,300 yards? Let's say he comes back for another year. Like, there's a reason why he keeps on. Sarkisian, I think, just knows. He's my boo. And I want him to be happy, and I want him to stay. And he was the starter for the first 2 games of the season, including the Alabama game when he comes in banged up. And Brooks is the guy who's just outperforming C.J. Baxter, period. I know he's still a little bit banged up. Sarkisian even mentions it in the postgame press conference that, hey, he's doing a good job, even though he is a little banged up. Well, if he's so banged up, why'd you give him 16 carries? Like, you ran him today like he's not banged up. But Brooks has been the guy. He's saving this team in the run game. Because I think if he was what the coaches thought he was when the season started, and Baxter has been as limited as he has, I don't think the coaches would have been convinced that the running game would be what it is. But Jonathan Brooks has been exceptional. And I'm not trying to start any trouble, but my brain does things like, well, what does it mean if this happens and this happens and this happens? And I just don't think that there's a world that Steve Sarkisian lived in last month. It's still September. I don't think there's a world where Sarkisian in August thought that he would be where he is in the running game. I'm sure he's happy, but if you told him in August that one of his running backs would have over 500 yards, would be on a stretch of 3 straight games with 100-plus yards, I think he would have thought that guy would have been C.J. Baxter.
Yeah. And it's not. And so he's got this like, well, it's a great problem to have, but it's also maybe a little bit of a problem.
Every time he gets asked about Jonathan Brooks, he has to say something nice about C.J. Baxter. I mean, it's happened like 5 times now. I mean, I'm not making it up. It happens every time he's asked a question.
You got multiple boos.
I'm telling you, it's hard out there for a pimp. Texas defense performed far better in the first half against Kansas than what – okay, now let's not do this. Let's not compare first half defensive performances
for different opponents.
Different opponents. One team out of nowhere apparently playing the second string quarterback. Thank you for the super chat contribution. And look, I think the bigger point that is being made right now is that the Oklahoma defense isn't anything special. But I think you can point – I don't know that we need to even talk about the first half against Kansas. Kansas ran the hell out of the ball in the first half, no matter how the numbers finished. Here's a crazy stat for you, Anwar. And I'm so pissed at myself because I jotted this down, but then I didn't make it a note in my post-game analysis. So now I've forgotten the numbers. But I think Kansas had 92 yards rushing in the first quarter.
Wow.
But they finish with like, what did they finish with? Like $120, $130. So they were getting gashed. If they finish with Kansas finish was 124 yards.
Yeah.
So they open up in the first quarter and they're gashing Texas. And in the final 3 quarters of the game, Texas cut that shit out.
Yeah. Yeah. They figured it out. The one thing you can say about this defense is once they figure it out, it's pretty much a wrap.
It has been in every game they played so far this season. When they figure it out, they shut it down. So if we had one of the super chats earlier, are we really going to allow for PK to have as much time to make the adjustment? I mean, it ain't like this thing's going into the third quarter. It took him 15 minutes. And then the only thing that happened beyond that was a deep pass play against one of your backups. We talked about it in the watch along, Anwar. They rotate those DBs a lot. And sometimes when you rotate your DBs, and you got your second team safeties on the field in man-to-man coverage, sometimes they give up like 58-yard touchdown passes. And it hasn't happened all season long. I don't think you come out of this game really worried about the pass defense. I don't. But when they're rotating in the backups, something to keep an eye on moving forward. Iowa State ran that play, and it felt like attacked Keaton Crawford in coverage, like they saw something that they liked and went right at it. And it was, for me, the worst play in coverage of any Texas DB through 5 games so far. Like, he just got ran by. But you know what? Those things sometimes happen. Keaton Crawford will learn from it. And I think the Texas coaches will learn from it as well, Anwar, when they think about the situations in the game in which they put their backups in. Not all backups are created equal, and not all backups need to be put into the same situations that you would put your starters in, because you don't want to change your defense.
Totally agree.
Another super chat here. Texas defense just wears on you and wears on you. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a team that people, and I don't have to go look through the numbers, but this ain't teams are not getting stronger as the game goes along against Texas. Like that the second half collapses that we're used to seeing, and that's not happening. So yes, by the time it starts getting in third quarter, these games are pretty much trending in a certain fourth quarter. It's when you're putting this thing out of reach. Whatever we question about the offense at times, we have not been. There's been no question about the defense this season. We haven't seen a shootout or anything, any kind of just super flaws like that.
How'd you do on Prize Picks today, by the way?
And Catch. So here's the crazy thing. I was going to tell you. So I had a 6-pick entry, right? I got Adonai Mitchell with the more. He was at 43. He shattered that.
Yep.
I had Quinn Ewers with the more. I told you I'm going more everything Texas, right? Quinn Ewers hit the more. Xavier hit the more. Jonathan Brooks hit the more. But then Jatavian gets hurt. So they put something called a reboot on there.
Yep.
And then Jalen Daniels did not play. So they said they refunded my money. So if these guys play, I probably hit big.
Well, that's weird, because let me tell you what happened to me.
Okay.
I hit Mitchell, same as you, Mitchell, Ewers, Worthy, and I had Shador Sanders with the more in passing yards.
Okay.
And Jalen Daniels got a DNP, and they gave Jatavion Sanders a reboot. So it was a $50 flex play where ultimately I go 4 for 4, and they paid out $250.
Wow. Well, that's crazy.
So how come you didn't get?
And they said it was refunded.
I don't know what to tell you. I can take you. I almost don't want to send you a screenshot in the event that you send it to them and say, "Hey, what's the difference between this and this?"
What was your wager?
It was a $50 flex play, and I went. It was a 6-pick entry.
Yeah, I did 40. I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
So it had been 6 out of 6. It would have been for $1,250.
Anwar, it should have rebooted down to the lower, the next level down of entry. You shouldn't get refunded. You should still win, I think.
I mean, it should be a 4 out of 4.
It says refunded right here. It says refund.
I'll take a screenshot of what mine is, and I'll let you look at it. I think that should be a win for you. And if it worked out like it would be for me, if it was a $40 play, that should have been a $200 win. Speaking of which, let's get some love to Adam Loewy and the Loewy Law Firm, the longtime sponsor of the Postgame Show. If anybody ever harms you and you need to sue them or a company or a dog, I don't care. If you get hurt, you need to go to Adam Loewy and the Loewy Law Firm and let him make you money. It'll be like hitting the jackpot on the slot machine. It's what he does. He's eventually going to be the mayor of Austin, but I think that might be 5 years away. In the meantime, just let him make you a whole bunch of money when you need a lawyer to win you a whole bunch of money.
Absolutely. And Adam's been a proud partner with us for many, many years. And so we're grateful that
he's finally getting some return on sponsoring Texas football.
It would just always be all right, we'll run it back. And now I feel like he can say, all right, damn it, It's finally getting seen as much as my billboards.
Now on the Postgame Show for the number 3 ranked team in the country. Hell yeah.
Yes.
Hey, I think
Let's do a couple more and then
well, I was going to ask you for your game balls, although we got a stat here. Second time in UT history with a 300-yard passer, a 200-yard rusher, and a 100-yard receiver per John Bianco. That's a hell of a stat. I'm trying to think of when did that happen.
Let me see if John has put out his notes yet. I don't have it, so let me see what John put on his Twitter account.
300, 200, and 100.
Let me see what John put
There's
on
a
his.
part of me that thinks that maybe that's a Ricky Williams Major Applewhite stat. I don't know. We'll see. I'm curious to find out when the first time.
Okay, he said Major Applewhite threw for 328. Hodges Mitchell rushed for 204. And Montreal Flowers had a $111 in a 38-28 victory against Oklahoma in 1999.
Wow. I didn't see that coming. I was thinking, you know what? Maybe we're going to get a major Ricky Kwame Cavill. And instead it was, I got the quarterback part right. But boy, I missed on everything else. And we also had this catch. You've been wrong on Brooks all year, accepting your acknowledgement anytime. Sincerely, JB Fan Club President.
Okay. Hey, catch. Team when they, got their team wins, they get, that's what happens. That's what happens.
I mean, look, I think he's probably right, but all I've ever really said was that the coach wants CJ Baxter to be the starting running back, and then CJ Baxter started the opening 2 games. I think I've always said Jonathan Brooks is a really nice player. He's been he was better today, and he's been better in the last couple of games than I think I would have thought going in. But, I'm not as wrong. Let me put it to you like this. I can say that Jonathan Brooks looks great. I don't have to mention the backup running back. Ask yourself this. If you sent that same super chat to Steve Sarkisian, how would Steve Sarkisian answer the question? And it would include Brooks has been really good. Like, he's been fantastic. But, boy, we love C.J. Baxter, and he's getting healthy, and we thought he looked good today on his 16 carries. By the way, too broke to pay attention is right. Hodges Mitchell, severely underrated Texas running back. Had he showed up 20 years later, I think he might be playing in the NFL. Instead, he played in an era when everybody was looking for a big old hoss at running back, and Hodges Mitchell, very much underrated all time among Texas running backs in a program that's got like 15 dudes that were great in college and great in the NFL level as well. All right, give me some game balls, Anwar, like the obvious ones, right? So look, let's just say Ewers gets a game ball, Mitchell gets a game ball, Brooks gets a game ball. Let's just get them out of the way. Who gets the first game ball after those 3 guys?
Oh, easy. Then that becomes Adonai Mitchell gets the game ball.
Did I say Mitchell?
Did you say Mitchell? You said Brooks,
Ewers, Mitchell, and Ewers all get game balls.
Okay, Mitchell's out.
Yeah, he's out. He's got his game ball. He's going home with a homecoming queen. Who's next?
Ooh, that's got to be someone on defense at that point, huh? It's because there's no one left on offense at that point. Well, I mean, Sark did. You know what? Sark praised DJ Campbell, so I'll give a game ball to DJ Campbell. I'll give one to him. He was in, I think, early on in the year. There was a game or so. Maybe it was a game 1 where people were like, "Oh, I don't know about DJ Campbell being out there. I don't know what that's going to look like. It's not looking good." I think DJ Campbell's been pretty damn good since that point. So I'll go with DJ Campbell as my number 1.
I have two guys in mind, but I'll just go ahead and say Jalen Ford, who I thought was really good today. Nobody on the defensive line had a tackle for loss. Kind of strange. Like, I ought to give kind of a mini game ball to the Kansas Jayhawks offensive line for not completely getting dominated by the Texas defensive line. Kind of the first offensive line that we've not seen that from. Ford was really good. He leads the team in tackles. He had one of the 3 tackles for loss that the team was credited with. I just thought he was really good today. And if I had to pick a guy on defense that I would give a game ball to, he's the first guy that comes to mind.
Next guy for me, I would just probably go Jade. And I feel like he's been extremely consistent. He has a good stop. What was that, on 3rd down or so? Where the quarterbacks try to scramble out. I mean, he just goes ahead, pushes the guy down. I think, he's been very consistent throughout the year, but this was another game of consistency for him. So I'd put Jade up there as well.
Yeah, I'm going to give that's a good game ball. My last game ball, you didn't take him from me. I'm going to give one to Jake Majors.
Wait, even after that snap?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't care. I give him that. Every time they showed a replay on one of the big, I know we're going to go to the super chat in just a second. Yeah. Every time they showed a replay of a big Texas run, it seemed like Jake Majors was making a really, really big block. Benjamin, my man.
Wait, speaking of Benjamins, that's a double meeting right there.
Benjamin with the super chat of the night. Just wanted to show you guys some love for what you guys do. AD and Jonathan Brooks and the entire defense get my game ball. Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Some people speak with their mouth. Other people speak with their wallet. And when you speak with your wallet, nobody going to argue with you. You know what? Go ahead. Give everybody on the defense a game ball and give AD and Jonathan Brooks game balls and let them know that Benjamin said so.
I think, seeing Adonai Mitchell kind of from a receiving standpoint, we were talking about it just, I think, earlier this week. I forget it's like, hey, there was a lot of hype about Adonai coming into here. Haven't really seen that explosiveness that we were supposed to see. Somebody must have played him that video because we saw it today, and I mean, it was explosive could be. And then Brooks, the thing about Brooks, Benjamin, I think the thing I like about Brooks, Benjamin, is that I feel like that guy has just really had to work hard to get to where he's at. I mean, from recruiting, where it was kind of like it took a while before the major schools, and really seemed like only Texas, maybe Texas Tech kind of got in on him, to having to sit behind, Bijan and Roshan, which rightfully so, that happens to, having the hernia thing. We hear all about Jaden Blue catch all throughout spring. That's the guy that we hear about. Then CJ Baxter comes along, and CJ Baxter wins the job. And then he gets the opportunity, and all he does is produce hits, and he's already got 500 yards. That's the thing about Brooks that I like about him. It's just this tenacity. So that says a lot. So Benjamin, absolutely, I'm with you on that one. And, of course, the entire defense.
Jay Ward says, this is for Alex, just for men fun. Burn orange in color, of course. Hook 'em. Thank you, Jay Ward. Alex isn't even here, and you're thinking of Alex. We do love that. Anwar, we're almost at the 2-hour mark in the postgame show. I think we're good. Do you have any final thoughts?
Hey, 5-0, enjoy it. If Texas gets to 6-0 going into the bye, the conversations that we have on the second half of the season are going to be a little bit different than the conversations that we have now. There's going to be a lot more big picture, a lot more scoreboard watching. So for some, it's going to be uncharted territory for me. But it's going to be fun territory for everyone else. So I say enjoy the win, enjoy it on Saturday. Do your prize picks on Sunday. Come back here on Monday morning for my, start at 6:30. Get ready for my show at 8, and then Catch and I will do Overreaction Monday at 9 o'clock. We'll get Texas OU started.
Like a big old ditto for me. I was just going to say kind of the same thing you said, which is, guys, enjoy the win. You're third in the country. You're 5-0. Oklahoma's next week. The Dogs agree.
Yeah.
I know some of you want to nitpick. Oh my God, I know you do. I know you want to point to that first half. You want to nitpick Kwiatkowski. You want to nitpick the offense. You want to nitpick Sark because he doesn't know how to use timeouts. That's fair. But your team won by 26 points today against a ranked team. And oh, by the way, one of the things we haven't said about the Jonathan Brooks performance is that was against a top 35 run defense. That's good Kansas run defense. They did a good job. They held BYU to 9 yards rushing last weekend. So don't poo-poo what they were able to do today. Enjoy it. Way back in the day, Mac Brown's teams used to be ranked in the top 5 and the top 10 on WAR. And they've won games like this. I'll never forget there was a game where Texas was winning like 42-10. And it was in the fourth quarter. And there was a guy booing Chris Sims because he threw an incomplete pass. It's like,
oh, wow.
It's 42-10. Like, guys, they only do this 12 times a year. We wait months and months and months for these games to come around, and then they give us 12 of them. When you win by 26, enjoy it.
For real.
Go have some drinks. Go take advantage of some Rogue products. Be safe. Get some sex tonight. Like, make it a good night. There's no reason to be unhappy unless you're a Liverpool soccer fan and you got cheated out of a match today. Which I'm just saying. So for myself and Anwar Richardson, there's no reason not to be happy. Go get some food. Go get some drinks. Go get some green. Go get some whatever it is that you prefer. Whatever that might be.
Yep.
Make it a great night. Your football team is having an exceptional season. No reason to pout. For myself and Anwar and Loewy Law Firm, sorry, I got distracted a little bit by the dogs. Thanks, guys. We'll do this again next week from the Cotton Bowl. Oh, it's the one that matters more than any other, with all due respect to Alabama.